So we started the recording. We want to welcome everyone to our second webinar that's part of the Swimwear campaign. Thank you so much for everyone that's attending right now. And we are currently going to make Gina our host again, so she can admit people, inshallah. And we are ready to start. All right. Sweet. So our webinar for today is the history of burkini and modest for Muslim women and women of other faith, presented to you by Shireen and Ola. My name is Ola, and I'm the CEO of Be Fit for Akhira. Sorry. I am also the podcast host of Purposeful Fitness with Coach Ola. I am a certified personal trainer and swim instructor, basic level. I started Be Fit for Akhira with a vision to have a stronger, more confident, and hopeful ummah. Our guest for today is Shireen Sabit. Can I say it correctly?
Sabit. Yeah.
She's the CEO of Splash Gear Swimwear. So in 1970, she was born in Egypt, and then she became a certified scuba diver, practiced Islam, and then adopted hijab, got her PhD in immunology from UCLA, mashallah, and then she established Splash Gear, one of the leading brands in a modest swimwear. And then she got featured in groundbreaking contemporary Muslim fashions museum exhibition. And so our objectives for today's webinar is to talk about the history of full coverage swimwear, the challenges within the Muslim community around clothing for swimming and water activities, product information, manufacturing process, and any questions at the very end. So the history of full coverage, I will start off, but I'm going to give it to our guest, Shireen. So would you please share with us the history of swimwear from your experience?
Yeah, so what happened was, as you showed on the previous slide, I wasn't always a hijabi. I wasn't always a practicing Muslim to begin with. And through my life, I became practicing Muslim, praying salah, fasting, et cetera, et cetera. And then shortly after that is when I decided to wear the hijab. And it's not an easy decision. I think if you're in a Muslim majority country, it's probably a lot easier. It's more familiar, et cetera, et cetera. But in this kind of society, especially with hostility, animosity, et cetera, misunderstanding, there's a big struggle when it comes to people choosing to wear the hijab. So I went through that myself, but I did accept it. I adopted hijab, but I had become a certified scuba long before that point. And so when I adopted the hijab, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to continue with scuba diving? I love scuba diving. I love the marine environment. I love, being underwater and how, well, wait a minute, how am I going to do other kinds of water activities, go snorkeling on vacation with my husband, et cetera, et cetera. So I started realizing this problem that existed, but you don't realize it until it happens to you, right? There are a lot of things in this world that are going on, but you don't know, you're not aware of them until it happens to you. So it just opened my mind to this reality, because it wasn't just me, it was a whole bunch of other women all around the world, not just in the US, all around the world, and not just Muslim women. What about Orthodox Jewish women? What about conservative Christian women? What about large-sized women? All of a sudden, I just realized that there was a universe full of women that didn't participate in water recreation because there weren't enough options in the marketplace. So I actually wanted to just put something together, homemade outfits, go to the store, find what works, what doesn't work. But when I went to a woman's house, because she wanted me to consult her and tell her what to find and purchase and wear, her husband is the one that said, you should make this. You should have your own brand. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm a scientist. I'm not a fashion designer. And he kept encouraging me. And it was that gentleman. If it wasn't for that gentleman, Splash Gear would not exist. But he kept encouraging me. He kept telling me, no, you can do it. It's not that hard. Well, first of all, it is hard. And we'll get to that conversation later. But he's the one that encouraged me. And so because of him, I did go ahead and start the Splash Gear brand. And at that time, circa 2005, so some people in the audience may be surprised at how far the history goes back now. But in 2005, when I sat down to do my business plan, I wanted to do some research and find out, okay, well, what does exist? Are there any other companies out there, or am I the very first one? And so I did my research and I discovered that no, back in the year 2000, which was 20 years ago now, the BBC.com did a story on what they called the Sharia swimsuit. And I don't know if some of your audience members might recognize that term, but 20 years ago in Egypt, somebody came up with a Sharia swimsuit. And the scholars were saying, don't call it Sharia swimsuit. There's no such thing, but that was the nickname that it was given. There was no brand attached to it. And so I read the article, and it might still be up. So if you do a search on Google or Bing or Yahoo, you might find that BBC.com article still up there about the Sharia swimsuit. But then I discovered there's another brand out of Turkey. So in 2003, a gentleman, a Turkish man, had started a company. He actually wanted to design modest swimwear for men, but then he realized there was a need for women. And so that company's name is Hashima. So some people may again recognize that name. And so they were like the second company in the entire world that produced modest full coverage swimwear for women. The problem there, and it got a lot of publicity, but this is, you know, especially the younger group, Ola, especially people your generation, your age, you cannot appreciate the hostility and the animosity that came out against these types of swimsuits back then, because they didn't exist. It literally was a revolution. And so there was a lot of derogatory remarks and a lot of criticism made about Hashima, for example. The Sharia swimsuit was more local to Egypt. It didn't really leave the country. Hashima got more publicity, more media attention, and so they got a lot more criticism. Now, from the Muslim community's point of view, a lot of women, you know, we applauded Hashima, but their style was way off. It looked more like a tracksuit or a rain suit, and women were like, "I'm not wearing that. That does not look cool. That does not look good." So a lot of Muslim women stayed away from Hashima for aesthetic reasons. But just from a historical point of view, they were the second in the entire world. So I said, okay, well, you know, I'm going to start my brand Splash Gear here. And I have a different, you know, take to it. And we'll talk about the style and the design and the fabrication later on in the webinar. But I decided, okay, I'm going to continue with my company. And then after I launched my company, somebody emailed me a National Geographic article about another company that made full coverage swimwear for women, for Muslim women, and that was Ahida. And Ahida Zanetti is an Australian, a Lebanese Australian, and she started her company a year before mine, about 2005 approximately. And she's the one that so she isn't the first one to have created modest full coverage swimwear, but she's the one that termed her specific line the burkini. And it comes from the cross between burqa, because burqa was getting a lot of attention back then. The Afghan women, they're walking around with burqas, and then we invaded their country, and et cetera, et cetera. So she did a cross between the word burqa, that was in, you know, the media and very common and popular, and bikini. So she took burqa and bikini and combined it and called it burkini. And so that's her registered trademark. And there are two spellings, the one with the K, B-U-R-K-I-N-I, and the one with the Q, B-U-R-Q-I-N-I. But those are registered trademarks of the Ahida brand, of the Ahida company. And so she came out, you know, just slightly before Splash Gear. So at the beginning of 2007, there were only 4 companies in the entire world. One in Egypt, a no-name brand, one in Australia, one in Turkey, and one in the West, the Americas. And so we were the only ones at that time, and we had different styles. And I thought that was nice that, you know, we kind of covered the whole world. And then the copycats came later. But what happened with the term burkini is that whenever I got interviewed by reporters, because we got a lot of media attention back then, this was like something from the moon. This was like something from Mars that landed on Earth. And especially in the West, there was just a lot of media attention. And, oh, look at this. And, oh, Muslim women can swim now. And there was just this inordinate amount of attention paid to Muslim women, because we're oppressed, you know, we can't do anything. Our husbands beat us, and we're deprived. So this was a big deal to especially to the West, and it was a big revolution. And so when we got a lot of media attention, we got interviewed. I would get interviewed by reporters, and they started referring to the Splash Gear swimwear as burkini. I said, no, this is Splash Gear. This is not burkini brand. And time and again, I would get the response, oh, no, that's just a generic term. That's, that's okay. It's just a generic. It's like, no, it's not a generic term. That is somebody else's trademark. But they kept insisting it was generic. And it was really, I would say the fault of the media for taking a brand name, a trademark, and then converting it into a generic common term. And then just the Muslim community just started calling every modest full cover swimwear they saw as a burkini. And some people say, well, that's not a big deal. What's the harm in that? Well, the harm in that is that it's disrespectful. It's, if somebody has come up with a product or a brand or a trademark, you have to respect that. That's their work, that's their identity. And to steal it and to not give it the same respect we would give other corporations. Coca-Cola is a trademark. BMW is a trademark. Nike is a trademark. I can't go around calling my swimwear Nike. Oh, come get your Nike from here. Come get your Nike from me. No, Nike is its own independent corporation and brand. And it seems like everybody respects that. But when it comes to the Muslim community, or when it comes to Muslim women entrepreneurs, somehow we can degrade them and not respect their trademark property. So some people say there's no harm, et cetera, et cetera. But we just have to respect other people's and other companies' trademarks and registrations and brands. But that's it in a nutshell, as far as the history of splash gear, as well as the history of the term burkini and modest full cover swimwear. So this is not a product that just, arose back in 2019 with Nike. It's not a product that arose 5 or 10 years ago. This has been around literally for 20 years now, but we've seen different evolutions, and we've seen the popularity rise, and we've seen the interest in Muslim women rising. And so you're seeing more and more companies out there. And some have gone out of business, and then others have popped up. And so now it is part of the I wouldn't say part of the mainstream, but it's established, right? Modest full cover swimwear has now been established. It's not a new thing. It's not novel. It's not revolutionary. Now many women have access to water activities on their own terms. And so that's kind of where we've come in about 20 years.
Thank you so much. And everyone that's watching right now, I'm actually wearing her hijab.
Swim hood.
Yes,
swim hood.
and it's so exciting when I find out that I bought it from a swim outlet, which is why I put a post about it. And so we will go on to talk about, let's see.
And one thing actually, I missed something on that slide.
Yep.
As far as modest swimsuits, Muslim women are not the first ones to come up with it. Actually, if you go back to the history here in the US, a lot of conservative Christian and Mormon community members started their own companies, but they didn't get they barely got any media attention. It wasn't until the Muslims came up with their own swimsuit. That's when the Orthodox Jewish company started up. That's when the Mormon companies got more attention, the conservative Christians. So if you look at different communities, again, it's not very new, alhamdulillah, but just each community developed it on its own, for its own reasons, for its own dress code. And so again, the history of modest full cover swimwear goes even back further than just the Muslim contribution. So I just want to make sure I didn't miss that.
Yeah, and that's actually a very good point about the Orthodox Jewish, because I did not know about how they have to cover up long skirts. And when I asked one of the Instagram followers about it, and she said, yeah, we also have same issues when it comes to renting a pool, all of it, and then what they have to wear. So
absolutely.
So now after we cover the history, we go over the challenges that we face within the Muslim community. So Shireen will talk in depth because she had more experience from her customers, clients, teens. So why don't the Muslim teens want to cover up for swimming? More Muslim men than women know how to swim. Why is that? The resource availability in certain communities, different reasons why Muslim women purchase full cover swimwear, and why is swimming critical, and why we should encourage within our community. So Shireen, why the teens don't want to cover?
So it's really interesting.
Want to cover.
When I started Splash Gear, I just assumed You think about who is your customer base, who's your demographic, who are you going to market to? And I just assumed, oh, it's going to be the girls, right? The girls want to go out, they want to have fun, they want to jump in. And so it's going to be the teenagers and the college age students. And what I discovered was really very surprising. SubhanAllah, it turned out, and it's still this way today, the vast majority of my customers are moms. We're talking 30 to 45 years old. So that's not the young, girl demographic. This is a slightly older crowd in the sense that they have children, they're moms. And so I started wondering, well, why is that? Part of it could be disposable income. College students, they complain about their textbook prices, et cetera, so they can't afford a lot of other things. So it could be a money issue, financial issue. Women who are established, they have jobs, they have disposable income. Maybe that's one reason. But it turns out when I've done these pop-up retail events locally, families will come up to me and they say, oh yes, my daughter right here. We want a suit for my daughter right here. And you see this preteen, early teen, and she just stands like this. She's not happy. Clearly she's not happy. And the parents are asking, size, color, et cetera, and she's just like this and stands back. And I can tell from the body language, she doesn't want this. And I would see this time and again, not every single girl. There's some Muslim teenagers who are hijabis. They're confident, they're comfortable, they're okay. They do what their parents tell them. They're obedient and like, yeah, okay, I'll get a suit. But other girls were like, no. So I would step in and say, well, it doesn't look like she's interested, maybe later. And they're like, no, she needs one now. So it was clear to me that a good percentage of Muslim female teens and preteens, they were not happy with this idea of wearing full cover swimwear. And then I ran into, at one event, I ran into one of my loyal customers. She's a big fan of Splash Gear. She and her sister, they're adult women. They travel. And they each have daughters. And one of them said to me, she goes, I don't know why. Here's some pictures from our vacation, but I don't know. I try to get my daughters to get their own Splash Gear suits so they can join us, and they don't. They'd rather sit on the sand. I'm like, yeah, they're teenagers. I don't understand. They'd rather sit out on the sand in the heat and not participate. And I've got my Splash Gear on and I'm going in the water and I'm having fun and I'm trying to get them in, but they don't want to. And they told me, I asked them why. I said, they're too embarrassed. They don't want their friends to see them, dressed up like that in the beach. So when it comes to teens in this society, especially, we have to be sensitive to the peer pressure. We have to be sensitive to the harassment, the bullying, the picking on, right? We're a minority group. We stand out. People already don't like us as it is for other reasons. And then to have this on top of it, at that age, they probably are afraid of maybe fitting some stereotypes that exist. So it turns out from the feedback that I've gotten and from my firsthand observations, that teen and preteen group in the Muslim community, that the girls, the young ladies, they're too embarrassed. They'd rather not get in the water. That's not true for all of them. But for many of them, they'd rather not they'd rather suffer on the side because that's just too important to them, how they look in front of their friends or in public. So that's one obstacle to try to overcome and trying to get our Muslim girls, and a lot of these are not hijabi girls. They're not going to walk around in bikinis, but they're not hijabis. So they're in between. So I think part of it is a confidence level. They're just not confident enough in their own, perhaps in their own deen, or just they're just not. They're very self-conscious, and I think that's one issue that we may need to work on as a movement and a community, is to help them become comfortable. And you can't just say, oh, don't worry about other people think. That's not, to be honest, that's not a practical piece of advice. Obviously, from a psychological point of view, there are members of our community that this is an issue for, and we just have to help them overcome it, or just wait until they grow out of it, for example. But I can answer that question from the feedback, the direct feedback, as well as the firsthand observations.
One of our guests, viewers said, Khadija said that also the design and colors play a role. And I think it's also another important point. which is why
Yeah.
Nike got on it
Well,
as well.
well, and this is a funny thing when we talk about, I guess we'll talk about it a little later on when we talk about fabrication design, but
Yeah.
that is a very good point, Khadija, that you touched upon, because when I designed the Splash Gear swimwear line, I put a lot of time and thought into it, not just from the Islamic compliant point of view, not from a comfort point of view, but the aesthetics. And I wanted it to look like something Western. I wanted it to look like something that was surf inspired. You know, I live in Huntington Beach here, which is referred to Surf City, USA. I'm a scuba diver. So I drew upon surfing and scuba diving for the style and the design. And so my line has actually been, people have commented that the line is colorful. It is bright colors. It's Western looking. It's athletic looking. And I wanted to do that specifically. And the first colorway was actually Hawaiian print. Now it's the sports stripe, the more athletic look. But in the beginning, I had the Hawaiian print colorway because I wanted my Muslim sisters to blend in and to fit in as well and as much as possible, and to look as normal as possible while they're out in public, at the beach, at the pool. So I do agree that that's a concern, but that wasn't the concern for Splash Gear specifically. They just didn't want to cover up at all. We have bright colors. We have ocean blue. You're wearing the purple. We have purple. We have navy. We have different colors. We have different prints. That wasn't so much the issue, I think, for Splash Gear. I think it's just a general overall concern of they just don't, perhaps in their mind they might look foolish, but that was a serious concern of theirs.
Yeah, and as a follow-up, I agree that she said the YouTube life is real. Yep, it is, unfortunately, in the whole social media.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from you on why more Muslim men than women know how to swim.
Yeah, and this is actually an issue not just in the Muslim community but worldwide.
Yeah.
If you look at the statistics, I think it was a World Health Organization that posted that 4 billion people worldwide are estimated to not know how to swim. 4 billion people out of, we're at 7 something billion now. So that's the majority of human beings. And so that includes both men and women. But when you look at the swimmers, the majority of swimmers worldwide are men. So this isn't something specific to the Muslim community, but since we are talking about the Muslim community, if you look at the Muslim community, it's the same reflection. More men swim, more men scuba dive, more men are athletic, more men are do water recreation. And that's probably that's probably due to a very cultural reason, right? Nowhere in Islam, well, let me back up a little bit. When I told you, when I went over the history of modest full cover swimmer, and I mentioned that at the time there was a lot of animosity and hostility, it wasn't just from the non-Muslims, it wasn't just from Islamophobes and people from outside the Muslim community. Even within the Muslim community, Muslims were coming out saying, this is haram. There's no such thing as modest swimwear. Men and women are not allowed to swim together. So again, you guys may not hear that language now because it's established, right? We've gotten past that point. But at the beginning, I remember reading the comments. I remember, in the newspaper articles, when they got different opinions, they interviewed different people. Within the Muslim community, there was hostility against it. This is haram. So if there's that attitude, if that attitude existed when full cover swimwear was created for our community, what happened before that, right? So if it's haram to swim together, well, where are the opportunities for women in the Muslim community to swim? Where are the opportunities for Muslim women to recreate, right? Places like Iran, which I've never been to Iran, but this is what I've read, so I can't corroborate it, but I've heard of places like Iran that have Muslim women beaches, right? So they've set aside, and this touches upon resource availability in certain communities. There are places, communities within the Muslim world where they set aside pool hours or gym hours. They set aside stretches of beaches, so it's Muslim, it's women only. Men are not allowed to enter. So when you have places like that recognize and give equality to women, say, well, women are just as equal to men. They have the equal right to swim. They have the equal right to participate in sports. They have the equal right to recreate, and they just found ways to do it. Alhamdulillah, God bless them. Jazakum Allah khairun. But then you have other communities where it wasn't important. It wasn't a priority. And so the women didn't get those resources. If they didn't get those resources, if they didn't get those facilities, if they didn't get those accommodations, then they didn't get those opportunities. So I think it's very much a cultural issue. I think it's very much a community-based issue when it comes to resources. Do all Muslim communities all over the world have the financial resources to build women's only and men's only facilities? What about public? They go down to the river, they go down to the lake. Well, are you going to start segregating? So part of it, I think, is there an ability to do that, and part of it, I think, is there a will? Is there a priority put on, offering equal facilities if you're not going to do co-ed? And the whole point of full coverage modest swimwear is really to allow women to be in public in a co-ed situation. If we're doing women only, you don't need all this full coverage. The whole point of hijab is to allow women to enter the public sphere. If we weren't going to be in the public sphere, if we're going to be home all day, we don't need the hijab. So the whole point of the hijab was to allow women to come out of the home, to go out into the public and participate equally. That was the whole point of hijab. And that's the whole point of full cover swimwear. So if Muslim communities around the world are not going to be providing opportunities, or they don't prioritize those opportunities for women, that's where the full coverage swimwear comes in. They now have, there are a lot of companies around the world now that offer full coverage swimwear for Muslim women. And so now they have the ability to put it on, cover themselves up, and go anywhere to do what they want to do. So I think just historically, that's why more Muslim men have learned how to swim, because it's just a lot easier for them than for Muslim women.
Yeah, it's a good point. And then the whole haram halal thing is a real thing, but I think we're opening up more to it, alhamdulillah, now. And then the resource availability in certain communities that we mentioned, and then the different reasons why Muslim women purchase full coverage swimwear. So it's not just about modesty, but I think it's also about confidence, that you mentioned. So what have you seen from your experience from your previous clients, why they purchase like full coverage?
Right. So this is another interesting, it's funny. I don't come from apparel manufacturing. I'm not a fashion designer. This fell in my lap and I had to learn a lot. It was a steep learning curve. And so one thing, as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, you have certain ideas, you have certain prejudices or predictions, and then it turns out, nope, that wasn't correct at all. It's actually, this is the reality. So as I said earlier, as I mentioned, I thought my demographic was going to be the younger women, and it turned out, no, it's not. The other thing that I discovered is I just assumed every single Muslim woman wants to swim and is waiting for full cover swimwear. And it turns out, no, that's not true. A good percentage of Muslim women don't care for swimming. They're not interested. It's not a big deal for them. No, thank you. I don't want that. So it kind of surprised me initially, but I'm like, yeah. So then I discovered that we have a spectrum. We have a spectrum of women in our community. And I've met these women. These women have provided me with feedback. And so I'm just presenting that to your audience. At one end of the spectrum, we've got the women who are like, I don't know how to swim, and I don't want to learn how to swim. I'm not interested in swimming. I'm not interested in water recreation. I don't want this product. Okay, that's fine. Then I've had customers tell me, I don't want to swim. That it's not about me swimming. It's just that when I go to the pool with my kids, like for example, their apartment complex has a pool or public facility. When I go to the pool for my kids, I don't want to sit in my abaya on the lounge chair, and then all these women are in their bikinis and I just stand out. Again, the peer pressure, right? Again, feeling out of place, right? And so these moms wanted to buy full cover swimmer, not for themselves to get in the water, but so they can just fit into the crowd better. They had some clothing, some garments that just fit the scene better, instead of wearing their long black abayas under the hot sun at the swimming pool and getting stared at. So those women would purchase the swimwear just for that reason. Then I have other women who've told me that they've purchased the swimwear, again, not for their own recreational needs, but they want to be able to be ready to jump into the pool if their child or somebody else is in trouble. They want to be able to, they don't want to be like all dressed up again in their abayas or their other garments. They want to be ready at a quick moment's notice to jump in and save a life. So that's why they purchased the swimwear. And then I've had at this end of the spectrum, women and young ladies who purchase it because they wanted to go out, they wanted to swim, they wanted to do laps, fitness related, they want to go on their honeymoon. They're getting married, they're going to go on their honeymoon to an exotic paradise place, and they want to go swimming, snorkeling. So there are Muslim women who are very active, but they're not, I wouldn't say they're the majority in the community. But they do exist, and they're the ones that want to purchase the swimwear to use it on a regular basis, to use it to go to the water park with their kids, to go on family vacations. So I basically, you know, had the gamut, people purchasing it for different reasons, and we should recognize that yes, Muslim women, we are a spectrum when it comes to this topic, just as with any other topic.
In your experience, have you had any interest from competitive swimmers? And is that something that you look forward in the future as well?
You know, in the very beginning, I have always wanted to sponsor a team, a swim team, or a professional athlete swimmer, but they just didn't exist. You know, going back 15 years ago, I would look for them. They just didn't exist. There was one school in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. I forget the name of the school, but it was a middle school. They did purchase Splash Gear Swimmer for their swim team, for 4 of their Muslim hijabi swimmers. But I've always wanted to sponsor female athletes for swimming or any other sport, but you know, it seems like they exist now, but going back 15, 20 years, we just apparently didn't have them.
Well, we have
So
one.
this is an advertisement. If you like a sponsor, come talk to Slash Gear.
Yeah, we have one in our audience. Khadija is actually a triathlete, and she's
Khadija Diggs. Yes.
yes. So
Yes. Hi, Khadija.
She's the one who asked. But that's actually really interesting because when I work with the local Islamic school here in my house, they purchase all their stuff from Swim Outlet. And then I know Asia Sport, another like leading brand that's, you know, they have some hijabs. They do a lot of like sponsorship as well. And I think Khadija is also one of their one of their athletes. So inshallah, I think now that you're like,
well, Asia Sport wasn't, that's, so a lot of these brands came later, and I think the timing is very important.
Yeah.
You know, when I was talking to you all that, you're like, I've never heard of Ahida and Burkini. I've never heard of, you know, it just seems like, really, we're not, you know, it's only been 15 years, 20 years, but it surprises me how many people don't know those pioneers anymore.
Exactly.
Because there have been other brands that have come up, the popularity, I think, on the one hand, what I think is interesting, I think that, you know, sales were very strong in the beginning because this product just didn't exist. Now that those women have these products, and Splash Gear Swimmer lasts a long time, so they don't have to buy it every year or every couple of years. But I just wonder, I'm curious to know what the demand is at this point compared to the beginning. But I've noticed there are a lot more brands out there. Or a lot more, you know, like no-name brands as well as other brands. So I think timing is an issue. Social media is an issue. I have to admit, I've been bad with social media. So people probably have never heard of Splash Gear because I've just been really bad with social media content. I kind of missed the boat. Splash Gear and other brands, Hashima, we started when there was no smartphone. The smartphone didn't even exist at the time. Facebook was only desktop. You know, there was no Instagram. So I think when you cross social media with the timing of all these other brands that have used social media really well, that's when these other brands have come up. That's when Muslimas sharing their public, you know, sharing the life publicly, going out doing triathlons or competitive swim or whatever, or vacation. I think that convergence really helped the newer brands, whereas us older brands kind of got left behind and forgotten by current folks. So Swim Outlet sells a lot of swimwear that it has a modest swimwear category that the Splash Gear pioneered, but there are now only 3 brands there. Everything else is just mainstream, right? I mean, swim leggings have been around forever. Long sleeve rash guards have been around forever. Those are not considered, you know, those are not necessarily modest swimwear. Those have been around forever for other uses, for other purposes. So now that more people more Muslims are getting into the outdoor stuff, and they're exploring more. I actually had to tell some customers, well, here's Swim Outlet. You can buy, children's stuff here, or, they had no clue. What is this? This was all new to them. REI was all new to them. So I think now more and more Muslims who are doing outdoor activities, they're familiar with these sources, right? I used to buy stuff at REI before. I used to buy stuff at mainstream stores before Splash Gear was established or anything else. But now I think more Muslims are being more active. So those Muslims specifically are going out and seeking resources that have been around for a long time, and purchasing, like you said, from Swim Outlet.
Yes, and we will talk about how you inspire Swim Outlet and your experience with big brands that are on it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will get on that. Oh, oops. Oh my gosh. Product information. So please show us the design fabrication and the features to look for when shopping for full coverage.
Sure. And so I kind of touched upon it earlier, but I wanted to wait till we got to the section. When I sat down to design Splash Gear, the Splash Gear line, this was very, very serious and heavy on my mind, because again, I knew that because this was new to the Muslim community, there were going to be people who might be critical. They're going to judge it very severely. And so I wanted to make sure this was Islamically compliant. It was going to abide by the consensus fatwas on what modest dress is. And I don't know how many individuals in the audience are Muslim or not Muslim, but there's a modest dress code for men. There's a myth that, oh, Muslim men can wear whatever they want. That's not true. We never started that myth. Somebody outside the Muslim community started that myth. And so Muslim men have a modest dress code. Muslim women have a modest dress code. So I want to take a minute, just in case there are members of your audience who are not aware of this. In Islam, just as in Judaism, and just as in conservative Christianity, in Islam, when a boy or a girl reaches puberty and they begin to sexually develop, they must cover up their sexuality in front of unrelated members of the opposite sex. There's nothing, earth-shattering about that, actually. It's been around for a long time, and among different cultures. But when a boy or girl reaches puberty, they have to cover up. Now, a man's sexuality is not the same as a woman's sexuality, and so the dress code is going to be different. For a man, he has to cover from his navel to his knee at all times. The more conservative a Muslim man is, he ends up covering his entire body, including his hair, his head. So you can tell what a very, very conservative Muslim man looks like when I give this presentation about Islam and women in Islam and hijab at the college classes at the university as a guest lecturer. I kind of tell them the more conservative Muslim man is, he looks just like a Muslim woman. He's covered from head to ankle, long sleeves and neck and all. So the absolute minimum for a man is navel to the knee at all times, but the more conservative they are, they tend to cover their whole body. For a woman, her sexuality is her entire body except her face, hands, and feet. Okay. For both sexes, the clothing cannot be skin tight, it cannot be transparent, it cannot be revealing. So those are the dress codes. And so I used that guide to design this Splash Gear swimwear line. And I knew that I better not mess it up, because I could have, fatwas against, Splash Gear, or fatwas against full cover swimwear, and we didn't want that. So I stayed with the guidelines very closely, using fabrics and using design. So if you look at the Splash Gear swimwear line, there are two types of fabrics that we use. I couldn't use one. I couldn't just use one for the whole outfit or the whole swimsuit, because either it'd be too boxy and unaesthetic, or it'd be too drapey and it'll stick to you. So for the bottoms, for the swim pants, I ended up using the same fabric that's used for men's board shorts. So for those in the audience that are familiar with surfers and the board shorts that you see at the surf shops or even at Target these days, because now that it's become so popular, there's a fabric, it's polyester, it's microfiber polyester. And that's the fabric I use for the bottoms, because it gives it a nice kind of shape to it that doesn't stick or drape. And then I put in the hem some stiffening fabric, a stiffener, that keeps it open when you come out of the water. So again, preventing the sticking, grabbing to sucking to your legs and being immodest. So there are these design features coupled with the fabric, the specific fabric. Now for the shirt, you can't use that kind of woven fabric for the shirts. It becomes boxy and unaesthetic. So you have to use a knit fabric that drapes. And so we use the polyester PBT fabric for the shirts and the hair covers. There's some mechanical stretch to it, but it's the cut, the design, it's cut that it's loose enough. And when you come out of the water, you just, tug on it, you just pull it out and it'll unstick very quickly. The fabrics are very quick drying. And the shirts are actually lined in the front panel for extra modesty in the chest area. So I wanted to make sure that it didn't stick to the person outside of the pool or in the pool, outside the water, in the water. It wasn't see-through, it wasn't revealing. And so the colors, when it comes to the colors, you learn quickly that certain colors are transparent, especially when wet. So I had to stick to certain colors and certain prints, and I had to forego others so it wouldn't be transparent when it got wet. So we have purple and lavender, we have a royal blue and aqua, we have navy, we have black and gray. So we do have a colorful line, but you have to be careful which colors and which prints to use so that they don't become see-through. And I think one company actually went out of business because of, I suspect because they ended up, it was designed by a non-Muslim person, and I don't think that person thought through the requirements for the Islamic dress code. And in the media, there were comments of, oh, it's see-through when that person comes out, we can see her bikini underneath. And so I think that might have been a reason for why one brand went out of business. And so you have to be very careful that you don't sell a product that backfires on the customer and doesn't deliver what it promises. So in designing the Splash Gear line, there are certain fabrics that I use, quick drying, chlorine-proof fabrics that didn't stick, making sure that they weren't see-through, and just abiding by the dress code in general.
That's a really good point. And like, I love your hijab. Seriously, it's like so amazing in the water. And then the men thing is such an interesting topic, because when I shared about it inside one of the swimming groups on Facebook, when Nike came out, like, I was complaining all that stuff. Then some men like understood my pain, like my emotional frustrations about Nike. And they're like, well, like if we're gonna talk about this modesty thing, then like let's talk about men wearing in Speedo. And like I love how men are getting my point, but not the women. Like from our community, it's like, okay, well, anyways, we'll get into it in a bit, but like it was a Christian man. He was like, if we're gonna talk about it, like in Christianity, like a man should not be wearing a Speedo.
Exactly.
And then like I am working right now with this guy, and like I'm amazed at how modest he is. I'm like, mashallah, but why can't a Muslim man be modest? Anyways, thank you for like pointing that out, because I know like it's a big topic, and the things like, yeah, like.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Well, the Muslim, when you look at the Muslim community, we are very diverse, and I think we Muslims forget just how diverse we really are. So when you say that why can't Muslim men be modest, that's interesting to me, because I've actually had Muslim men come up to me at different points in time saying, why don't you design a modest swimwear for men? We need it too. I said, yeah, I know, but we women kind of desperately need it more than you. I'll work on the men's line later. And one of them was a college student, a young Muslim man from a college, college age. And he said, yeah, and then for the shirts, you can design like the sleeveless, like the tank, the muscle, and you can design. I look at him like, well, why do I need to design shirts for Muslim men? You guys don't need shirts. And he looks at me and goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, the dress code, you guys don't need shirts. And he goes, no. And he looks embarrassed, and he like covers himself with his arms. He's like, no. He could not imagine going out shirtless. So there are Muslim men in the community who are very modest, and they don't just want long shorts. They want shirts to go swimming in. And I'm like, well, you don't need shirts. That part of you doesn't need to be covered, but they're very shy. You'd be surprised how there are some Muslim men. There are Muslim men who are shy, and they do want to cover up. And he was a young man. He was younger than me. And he's like, no. I'm not gonna, no. And he starts giggling, and he's like, so it's interesting. You're right. There are Muslim men who are not modest. But that's true for everybody in the community, and there are other Muslim men who are very modest, and they want to cover up all the time.
Yeah, that's why we're having the webinar with Abby Fish talk about the whole mental health aspect within the swimsuit problem issue because
Yes,
it's like a man
sure.
issue. You know, they like there are men,
Hmm.
regardless of what faith you are, that have
Yes,
insecurities in body image. So like they tend to
that's
cover
true.
up. And I've seen men struggling in swimming, their strokes are completely wrong. And like, why can't they be represented? And that was my entire issue
Yeah,
point with Nike. It's like, thank you, Nike, but at the same time, like, let's get real and talk about the
right.
real issues.
But I think
Oh,
that's part of the stereotype, right? The Muslim women are oppressed, we're
yeah.
deprived. It's the Muslim men don't,
Yeah.
don't need a salute. It's like, well, no, you're not here to save us. Um, we've done that ourselves. Thank you very much. But yeah, I think the men do get, and it's not that I've neglected the men. It's just I haven't been able to get around to
So much
finally
to do.
getting
Yeah.
up. Yeah, there's just too much to do, and there's just really more of a need with the women than with the men. But you're right, there is a need for modest swimmer for men in our community as well. Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to talk about, let's see,
The
men.
features,
Oh,
actually, did you want me to go over features real quick?
yes, I thought you.
As far as,
Yes, please.
so if somebody is looking, if you're going to go shopping for modest full coverage swimwear, there's certain things that you might want to look for, because not all the modest full coverage swimsuits out there are the same. And so some of the things you might want to look for is, for example, chlorine proof fabric. Uh, about 20 years ago or so, they started switching over. It used to be just regular nylon spandex fabric, but as some people know, nylon spandex doesn't last. So that's why people have to buy a new swimsuit every year, a new bikini every year. Nylon spandex is very susceptible to chlorine, to sun damage, et cetera, et cetera. And we started out using nylon spandex for our shirts and hair covers, and I started getting some complaints about it degrading quickly. So we switched over very quickly to polyester PBT. So when you're looking for full coverage swimwear, try to find chlorine proof fabric. There is chlorine resistant, but it just lasts a little bit longer, but it will eventually fade. But polyester PBT or 100% polyester will never fade. It's guaranteed chlorine proof. The other thing you want to look for is UV protection. Some of the fabrics out there have zinc. I think it's zinc oxide and titanium oxide put into them. It's a coating, but that will eventually wear off. When it comes to UV protection, there are two basic rules. The color of the fabric, the darker the color, the more protection it provides from UV rays, and also the tightness of the weave, the fabric. If the fabric is loose knit, okay, it's lower protection. If the fabric is tight knit, it's going to block UV rays better. So you can buy fabrics that have coatings in them, sun protective coatings in them, but they will wear out eventually. So just make sure that you're looking for the darker the fabric and the tighter the weave of the fabric. For example, denim, which is not swimwear fabric, but denim is going to provide you with excellent UV protection versus chiffon, right? And so it's the same thing when it comes to swimwear fabrics. So you want darker colors and tighter weaves for UV protection. And then there are certain features you look for. It's nice to have a pocket, for example, to put your key in, whether it's in the shirt or in the bottoms. But make sure that the pocket drains. It's either made of mesh fabric like the splash gear one, or it has a hole, a grommet in it, so that it drains the water. You don't want to be carrying water with you and weighing you down. So when you get out of the water, you want to be able to have the water drain from you. And so having a pocket that either has a grommet hole, like this, or made of mesh fabric to drain the water easily. So those are some of the features that I would recommend for people shopping for modest swimwear.
It's very true, especially with the darker color, because the chlorine will kill like chlorine automatically will like fade the color away. So the darker, the better, long lasting, and the see-through issues that we have to go.
Yeah, and it's not just the color; it's the type. So the what you're wearing, the swim hood that you're wearing, Ola, it's purple, but because it's made of polyester PBT, it will never fade in chlorine. That's gonna last you a lifetime, inshallah.
Yeah, I can tell. Like it is such a mashallah, strong. So then, yes, manufacturing process. Can we go over like a little bit briefly about the whole product development, sourcing material, because we're getting close to an hour. So share
Yeah.
us like the process that you have to go through to create this product.
Yeah, this is so when the gentleman in the beginning encouraged me to do my brand and set up my own brand and manufacture myself, and I'm like, and he said it was easy. That was not true. Maybe it's easy for people who went to school for this, or maybe it's people, it's easy for people who are already in the industry. But for me, I was coming from outside, and like I said earlier, it was a huge learning curve for me. I did find, you know, a lot of these factories are not online. And so you kind of have to, you have to be able to go to this, to where it's at, basically where the industry is at. I was lucky enough, though, I did find somebody online who was not local. She was not local. She was out of the area, but she had her website up. I contacted her. She was, well, I don't do this particular thing, but I have a friend. So she referred me to a colleague of hers. And that was my first contact. That was my first entrance into apparel manufacturing. And since then, I've learned a lot. And I'm going to try to boil it down in a couple minutes for your audience. It comes down to, first, you have to start with a design. You want to develop a product. So you have this idea in your head. You need to get it out on paper. You need to do what are called line drawings. And then you want to take that idea of yours that was in your head, that was on paper, and you want to make a sample. So first, if you don't know anything about sewing, and if you don't know anything about pattern making, you have to find a pattern maker. Go to that pattern maker, and the advice is, well, go find something in the marketplace that's similar, bring it to me, and then we'll talk about changing it to your design. You give them a picture, you show them a picture of what you like or what you want, and then the pattern maker will design a pattern for that garment. If you know how to do that, great, more power to you. I didn't know how to do that, so I have a pattern maker. Splashgear has its own pattern maker that it contracts with to design or to redesign its garments. Then after you have a pattern, you now need to make a sample. And again, pattern makers are not necessarily sample makers. You might have to go find a sample maker, or if you can sew it yourself, great. But a sample maker will create that prototype for you. And it's not cheap. It can cost between $50 to $100 just to make one garment. Once you make that garment, you can tweak it, make another sample, do whatever changes you need to make before you go to production. And when you get to production, you have a choice. You can either find someone who is a production manager, a production coordinator. This person, and it's a good idea if you're totally new to the industry, it's a good idea to have one, but there are pluses and minuses. But if you can find a production coordinator, that person will source all of your materials. They'll find the contractor, they'll find the cutter, they'll get everything done, they'll send it to the factory, they oversee the production, make sure there are no mistakes, and they'll deliver. But you're gonna pay for that because that's their time, that's their labor, that's their job, so you're paying for that. That's how I started off. I started off with a production coordinator. But after gaining experience, I was able to find my own factories directly. I was able to source my materials directly. But then there's pluses and minuses to that because it's a lot more work, right? So you're saving money, but it's a lot more work. So you have to go to the factory. Factories don't provide you anything except the thread. The thread in their sewing machines, that's what they provide you. You have to provide everything to them. You have to provide all the cut panels. You have to provide the trim. You have to provide the size care labels, the inventory labels. You have to provide the packaging. You have to provide everything that factory is going to need to assemble your product. So you're doing all the legwork. You're running around sourcing the materials, making sure it got cut. Some factories will do cut and sew and package. Other factories say, well, we don't cut, we just sew and package. So every factory does things differently. Every contractor does things differently. Payment terms are different. And so when I started my very first production ever, I was, if I remember correctly, it was $35,000 or $38,000 out of my pocket. And that was a small run. That was a relatively small run. So you have to put up tens of thousands of dollars just to get your manufacturing and everything. Splashgear's production is done here in the United States. It's actually done all in California. We don't outsource to China or any other country. So on the other hand, I'm paying a premium, right? Because we care for our workers. We have labor laws that we stick to. They get paid well, and they're protected by labor laws. So first of all, production prices are higher, but it's all out of pocket, and then you turn around and have to sell it at a profit, right? So those are kind of the steps one has to take if you're starting out, if you have a design of your own and you want to make it a reality. And so the best places to find these contractors will be the industry trade shows. So for example, Magic, MAGIC, all capital letters, they have annual shows in the winter and the summer in Las Vegas. And if you go to one of their segments is sourcing. So if you go to sourcing at the Magic Show in Las Vegas, you'll meet all these different contractors, fabric suppliers, trim suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. Locally, we have the California Market Center, the CMC in downtown LA. That's our fashion district. And so they'll have annual shows where you can go and again, find those sources, find fabric sourcers, find fabric suppliers, find contractors, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, and if anybody has specific questions, feel free to contact me directly and I'd be happy to guide you. The California Apparel newspaper is a great resource, and they have in the classified sections, they list different companies and they'll do features on different segments of the industry and provide references. So the California Apparel News is a great resource to start with, as well as industry trade shows.
And so what are the marketing challenges besides social media?
Excellent. Well, so here's the thing, because I started out and I have no business background whatsoever. I had no idea. Nobody ever told me in the beginning that you really have to have just as much money. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this, as Allah is my witness, I'm not exaggerating. You need a marketing budget that's just as much as your production, if not more. And I didn't realize that, and I realized it too late. So if you're going to start up a company, you better have as much, you better be, for every dollar you're putting in production, you need to be saving $1 for marketing campaigns. Back then, before social media, before the, you know, digital marketing, there were not that many small businesses at the time. Pre-digital, there really weren't that many small businesses. The internet really exploded the number of entrepreneurs. It exploded the number of small businesses because of the ease and convenience. But what happened is now those traditional advertising avenues, newspaper, magazine, where you know you could reach your audience, you know what magazine or newspaper or literature your audience is reading, you could advertise in there. That's going out, if not gone out already. Broadcast TV, they say, you know, advertising there is going out. So the traditional platforms for advertising are gone or going out because everything's digital. Well, then when social media started, everybody's saying it's free, free, free. Come on, businesses. Come on, small businesses. You can post. You can advertise for free. I missed the boat on that because I was working full time and as a professor, and I just didn't have time for business. And I thought, well, you know, people are going to just find me via Google like they always have. And things changed on Google. Their algorithms changed, and I didn't keep up with that. It became more complex. It used to be really simple in the beginning, and then became more and more and more complicated. And then with social media, it was, you know, free posts for a long time. Now the posts don't work. What they tell you now is, you know, posts don't even work. You have to pay for advertising now. So we're kind of back to where we started, in the sense that you have to pay for advertising, because that's how it used to be. So even through Facebook, even through Instagram, the effective way to get an audience, you must pay money, you must advertise now. That's what everybody's saying. It's just the natural organic posts just aren't doing it anymore, not like they used to. So so it's very challenging because you don't know how to reach where is your audience? Where is my audience? How do you know where your audience is? How do you reach them? And platforms like Netflix, subscription-based platforms like Netflix, like Prime, Amazon Prime, Hulu, et cetera, they're advertiser free. That's the reason why they're subscription-based, right? You're paying not to see advertising. So advertisers are completely locked out of those platforms. So it has become challenging because it is financially challenging. You have to have a lot of money, just like it used to be back in the day. Only the big companies could advertise, right? Not the small companies. Internet promised a more level playing field, and it just hasn't turned out that way. You still need a lot of money now at this point to do marketing, and there are just so many different channels that you have to keep up with. It's just not like how it used to be 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's very, and I, you know, I attend seminars, I attend business seminars, and you have these experts, marketing experts, who come out and they keep painting a bleak picture, because it's very tough for small businesses. The big businesses, they've got the financial resources, they've got the money to do all the big advertising, the cool, slick advertising. But it's the small businesses are really suffering. It's very difficult to be able to reach your target audience. You have to be on top of the social media, like on a daily basis.
Which creates mental health struggles. Yep. I'm a small business owner, so I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
We're gonna go over, because again, we're a little bit over time. Perfect. Well, we actually didn't get to talk about your experience about reaching out to Nike, Speedo back in the day, and I want to hear that your perspectives. Would you please share how you got, into some outlet, how you got, what you had to go through back in the past, if you don't mind?
I never contacted Nike, but I did. So
Mhm.
before I started Splashgate, before that was even a concept in my mind, I reached out. So I became, I told you I became a scuba diver, and then I became a hijabi. It was after I became a hijabi, I'm like, well, let me reach out to some of the established mainstream companies and see if, they're willing to make swimwear for Muslim women. One of them was Tier. I did not contact Speed or Nike. One of them was Tier. And then the other one, I can't remember, was Title IX or Athleta, because I was getting their catalog at the time. And Tier didn't even bother to respond. So maybe they didn't get my email. I don't know, but they didn't even bother to respond. And the other company politely declined. And I was really surprised actually why they did that, because they're all about, feminism and women empowerment. But now looking back, I kind of understand they were the opposite type of a feminism from the Muslim community. So they probably didn't want to get into trying to cater to our needs. So that was disheartening. That's when I decided, okay, I'll just shop for myself. And that's when the gentleman finally said, you should do your own brand. So I, there was rejection, basically. There was no comment, no response, or no, thank you, we don't want to get involved. Nike specifically was actually, I think it was in 2009, if I remember correctly. There was an article in the newspaper published about them where East African Muslim community contacted Nike to ask them, could you please make, athletic wear for our daughters? And I remember distinctly their response was they declined because they were too afraid to get into that market. They were too afraid of Muslims. They were too afraid of the Muslim community, apparently. And so it's really what an about face they've made when they launched the Victory Swimwear line this past last December, because I guess they're not afraid anymore. So what happened? Where did that fear go? So I was really upset in 2009 when Nike was asked. They were approached by another part of the community, and they declined because they didn't want to get involved. But with Swim Outlet, Swim Outlet's the one that reached out to us, actually. It's alhamdulillah, praise God. It was Swim Outlet that contacted Splash Gear back in February of 2007, because they had read, I guess they'd read the media, and they were like, we want to sell your swimwear at our, and I was aware of Swim Outlet. I knew about Swim Outlet because I went to their site, again, long before Splash Gear. I went to their site, I was looking around. So I already knew that they existed, and what an honor I thought that they reached out to Splash Gear in February 2007, and they've been carrying the line ever since. So we pioneered the modest full coverage category on their site. And they have told me, they said, Shireen, this is a very, very small segment. We don't sell a lot of it. This is not their bread and butter, but they do see a need, and they do have people purchase. But I think it's great. I think that having different people come, can you imagine one place where you can get a bikini, Orthodox Jewish swimwear, Muslim compliant swimwear? Can you imagine one place that could cater to everybody in our society? I think that's awesome. So inshallah that will happen. But I feel privileged that Swim Outlet reached out to us, and we've been supplying them since 2007.
I'm gonna have Khadija be unmuted for a moment because she's a triathlete. I would like to hear her perspective really fast. So Khadija, if you don't mind getting on. So she's a triathlete who has tons of experience with this, and we will talk about it next weekend. But she brought a really good point that TYR is not interested at all. So I want to hear your perspective on why, and I'll share with you mine as well publicly.
It has been so eye-opening listening to you.
Assalamu alaikum, Khadija.
Walaikum salam. But just your talking and then mentioning the timeline, it's funny because I started doing triathlons, I think it was 2012. And as you talked about the timeline of how things progressed, I was like, she's right, because that happened to me. I've reached out. When I first started doing triathlons, it was just because I did it in a pair of leggings, and a dry fit shirt. I swam like that. I did the whole race like that.
Right.
And as I started wanting to become more competitive, I was making my kits. And I went to swimoutlet.com and I saw some of your gear, and I reached out to different companies about like, hey, you know, I want to go faster, but I can't go faster in this. And I had actually reached out to Nike. I had reached out to Adidas. They were not interested at all in making anything for competitive swimmers or triathletes at all. So I ended up having to make my own kits. I read all the rules related to USA Triathlon, and I made my own kit. And it's funny. People ask me what possessed me at my age to even try to make the U.S. team. Was in my mind, if I made that team, they had to make me a kit that was compliant.
Right. Okay.
I'm on the team. You got to give me a kit just like everybody else. And I made the team.
Alhamdulillah.
Roca was the sponsor at the time. They made me a kit. They don't sell the kit. They refuse to sell the kit.
So it's just yours exclusively.
There's two of them. I have two of them. They're the only ones. I have since partnered with another company. They have to be custom, but he does make USAT and International Triathlon Union compliant kits for Muslim women. So I understand the struggle in trying to be modest, but figure out what's really going to work. I have so enjoyed hearing you speak.
Oh, good.
And just the passion in your voice and the thought you put into the to the materials, and
I'm glad it was worthwhile. I'm glad it was worthwhile.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to be I actually have an email I'm in the middle of responding to you. So
oh, good. Inshallah, I'll look for that. But coming back to, you know, I'm not an athletic person, so I mean, I like scuba diving and snorkeling. I don't do the running and the you know competition, but I know that there is a desire within our community to want to do that, and especially lifeguards. There's a young sister actually in our community here who, because of COVID-19 this year, it got canceled, but she started training. She purchased a splash gear suit last summer to start training for lifeguard training. So and inshallah, I hope she makes it. But there is a big interest. There are hijabi girls and hijabi women. We want to participate, right? We don't want to ghettoize ourselves. We want to participate. We want to be out there. We just want to do it on our own terms. And it's just funny. Yeah. So I'm glad to see, I'm so happy to see Muslima hijabis accomplishing these things and participating. I had another gal last year come up to the booth, and she's like, oh, and you know, this was new to her. She purchased a pair of resort pants, and she said something about being competitive swimming. I was like, oh, I'm interested, you know. She goes, no, I'm too old now. And she wasn't old. She was she was maybe 20, but she's like, no, it's too late for me now, but I want to train some, you know, hopefully the new generation. So it's a shame that she didn't get that opportunity for whatever reason. But we have to acknowledge there are Muslim hijabis who want to participate, who want to compete. They don't want to take off their hijab. They want to keep it on. And so why not accommodate them? What's the harm in that?
I am living proof that you can never be too old, too black, too short, too chunky. I am all of that.
You're an inspiration, and maybe one day I will start following your lead, but you are definitely an inspiration, and I hope you continue for a long time to come, inshallah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love hearing your story.
Thank you so much. Like, I love all of this as well, and I'm so happy. Gina asked a question, a great question. Jazakallah khair, Riyaki. What would you recommend, this is for you, Shireen, by the way, what would you recommend ladies if they want to wear hijab and modest swimwear for the first time and may be shy about it? And how can we motivate, inspire Muslim ladies to modestly take to the water with confidence? So I'll let you speak first, and I'll also share my perspective.
I'm not going to lie to you. I too had my own reservations. I'm like, do I really want to go out in public, even in my own swimsuit, like it's, it's the environment. It's the environment that we're in. If it was a welcoming environment in the first place, we wouldn't have an issue, but we know that it's not a welcoming environment. That's the problem. So I don't know if I have the best answer, and I think Ola would probably be a better person to respond to that. But what it was for me is your desire to want to get in the water has to be much stronger than your feeling of self-consciousness. You have to want to get into that water badly enough that you tell yourself, screw it, I don't care what those people think. I'm just going to go in, because my desire to go into the water to snorkel, my desire to get in the pool and cool down, because right now it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That desire has to be so much stronger than feeling small and anxious. So sometimes it's just gonna have to take time. I think if a group of women went together, right? If you can go with a buddy, if you can go with a friend who's another Muslim hijabi and there's more than one of you, or even if you went with a friend who's not a hijabi, right? Or who's not even Muslim, but she's with you and you're together, there's strength in numbers. So that might be a piece of advice I would give other women is don't go alone, take somebody with you. Go with your family, go with your husband and kids. And because that'll give you something to focus on. You could focus on the kids in the water. You can focus playing with your friends. So it might help. But each person is different, and each person knows their limits. But it might help just to go with another friend, other hijabi Muslim swimmer, or somebody who's not. But that way it'll show other people around. And I think today, people today are not going to stare at a Muslim woman as much as they did 10, 15, 20 years ago. So actually, there a lot of Muslim women might feel self-conscious, but honestly, people have gotten used to it. Whether they like it or not doesn't matter. They've gotten used to seeing it. I don't know how it is on the East Coast, Ola, because you talk about your story. But out here, whether they like it or not, they're used to it. They see me walking on the beach with they don't even give me a second look. Nobody gives me a second look. Nobody gives anybody a second look anymore. So I think the times have changed. It wasn't like it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. But if there is that self-consciousness, I totally understand that. And we shouldn't just, brush it aside flippantly. I would suggest going with other people and having strength in numbers, inshallah.
That's a good answer to have confidence in how much you badly you want it. I agree 100%. There are very few stares here and there that I get. I shared my story with that lady that bullied me at a swimming school, but I also had another lady who was like, how do you swim like this? So there are these people that still exist in our society. And then the guys' parts, like when I swim at George Mason, for instance, I've had this competitive swimmers look at me. I'm not sure if they are impressed by my skills, or they're like, oh, she can't swim, or they're like, she's covered. I'm not sure what, but I've had few steps as well. Yeah, I know I can swim, mashallah. But so you have to be really confident in yourself, and that's a huge aspect. And I think it didn't come to me in one day. It took me years. And I was like, I'm done with this. I want to swim. I love it. I don't care anymore about people. And sometimes the rash guard will slip over and I have the speedo underneath it in my back, or the color fades away to see through. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to swim anyways. So it just has to be how confident you are. It takes time. The next question is, let's see. I have from Yasmin. I hope you're still here, please. It's for you, sharing, because she's also in the same industry. If you were to start all over again, would you start with launching a Kickstarter campaign, or would you in the beginning fund your own business out of pocket? What's your advice for business building their brand without Kickstarter campaign or a launch good? And I like that question too. Yasmin, you're still here? So yeah, that's for you, Miss Shireen.
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh yeah, okay. Welcome, Sam. Yeah, so she's creating products for runners.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, hey, you should come to this webinar, so it will help you. So yeah.
So I think what might be best is if you start with taking business courses. And I'm being serious. I don't think you necessarily have to go to college. There's an organization called SCORE, SCORE, SCORE. I definitely got. Those are the seminars that I attend even today. Even today, I'll still attend SCORE. So I started attending back then, and I still attend now. And there are experts, and they can help. But you kind of need to, if you don't have a business background or knowledge to begin with, that's step one, is understanding the mechanics of business, the money aspect. There's regulatory, I don't know where you're located, but in California, I'm not going to complain about regulations. Regulations save lives. But California does have a reputation of being a very, very highly regulated state. So as a manufacturer, I have to have my manufacturing license renewed every single year. I have to do an LLC every single year, a business license every single year. I have business insurance every single year that I renew. So there are business costs involved. And so you kind of want to understand just the mechanics of business and entrepreneurship to begin with. But you know what? It does take a lot of money. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't think Kickstarter campaigns are bad. They didn't, I didn't have them back then. So it was all out of pocket. It was all personal money. Now, when it comes to investors, that's another angle you might want to go is to get investors, but there are pluses. My business story is like, don't do investors, Shireen, don't, just keep it private. So privately owned. But that is another avenue. If you need income and capital, starting capital, there are investors, but you got to be very careful about your relationship with investors. That gets tricky, right? So there's, you can raise your own money. Now, the thing is, when I started my business, I was doing it for religious reasons. And if I'm going to do it for religious reasons, I'm going to have to cross my T's and dot my I's on the religious stuff. So I've never done riba. I've never done riba-based loans. So I've really put a lot of strict criteria on my business, because if I'm making halal, if I'm making swimsuits for the Muslim woman, according to the Islamic dress code, and it's halal, every aspect of my business has to be halal too. It doesn't make sense to do something not halal. So I have a husband who was willing to loan me interest-free money. And so when I needed loans, I would turn to my husband. I would pay him back interest-free. So I stayed away from the banks, but a lot of businesses have to turn to the banks, right? So I think the very first step is understanding the entrepreneur business aspect, the money financial aspect, before you even get to design. The design's easy. Finding a factory, it's not that difficult, but I think it's the money issue that is super difficult. You have to raise a lot of money. I was at a trade show. I was at the DEMA trade show for scuba diving with a booth for splash gear. The booth next to me was a guy who invented a new style of snorkel and patented it and all that stuff. So we were talking. That guy, he's telling me that he has an investor. He found an investor to work with him, but it was one of those, the investor would put $1 million in if he put $1 million in. I'm like, $1 million? He's like, yeah, I have to raise $1 million for my snorkel, to launch my snorkel. Like, that's a lot of money. But that includes the marketing aspect. Who are you going to hire? You have to hire staff. I started out by myself, and I've always had contractors, but I've not been able to afford to hire people. So you have that, there's a chunk of money that if you want to be successful, you need to think about, who do you need to help you with your business? What kind of person do you need? A salesperson, a marketing person? What kind of people do you need to surround yourself with? And you got to pay those people. That's a chunk of money. So the design part and the manufacturing part honestly isn't that difficult, but it's all the other aspects to make the business successful, to launch and stay launched. So I think you should just take some business seminars or business courses, get a business background first, save your money. It's your decision if you want to take out business loans from the commercial banks, try to get family to invest or friends to invest or others. But there are lots of strict rules about that. So just, tread carefully. Whatever path you take, just understand the rules and regulations and see if you are able to, if they're feasible, if those channels are feasible for you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Inshallah. I hope it's useful.
I think that's all the questions that we have. Anyone else? That's it. Okay. You're welcome, Gina. Thank you. So if anyone has any questions, you can find me on social media at BeFitForAkhirah, also at gmail.com to email me, and then join our private Facebook community, Purposeful Fitness with Coach Ola. I have workouts. You can ask any questions as well. Swimming related techniques, I can also help you. And then we have Shireen on social media at Splash Gear, and then her professional email is shireen.sabit. I'm saying it wrong.
Sabit. As in rabbit.
Right, there you go. At splashgearusa.com. Last but not least, since you're attending today, thank you so much. We have a discount code for Akhira until August 29. We have, you can receive 25% off regular price shirts and bottoms.
And this is at splashgearusa.com. Splashgearusa.com.
Yes. So I'll also be emailing it to you since you registered for this. And then I'll be giving away hijab and goggles throughout this coming 2 weeks. We have giveaways from different brands during this campaign time. And thank you again for attending for Akhira until August 29. And I'm going to stop sharing. Actually, I'm going to stop recording the PowerPoint for a second.